While the internet is busy arguing whether Gen Z is too sensitive or millennials are too tired, there's this entire generation quietly watching from the sidelines like, we've seen this movie before. And no, you're not irrelevant. You're not emotionally unavailable. You're not stuck in the past. Your brain is actually wired by a very specific psychological environment most people never had to survive. What nobody tells you is this: Gen X didn't just grow up differently. Your nervous system adapted to a completely different world, and that explains almost everything about how you think, feel, and move through life. Stay with me. Let me break down what's really happening in that brain of yours. You grew up in what psychologists call a high-contingency environment. Translation: things were unpredictable. Adults were distracted. Systems failed quietly, and you learned early that paying attention mattered. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, self-regulation, and emotional control, had to mature fast. Research using fMRI scans shows that people raised in environments with inconsistent caregiving often develop stronger internal monitoring systems. Basically, your brain learned to scan the room before anyone told you how to feel about it. Most people's brains come with a spam filter. Walk into a situation, they delete 90% of the input. Your brain, it screenshots everything. It's like everyone else is watching life in 480p, and you're stuck with an 8K IMAX experience you never asked for. You're not cynical, you're pattern-trained. You're not detached, you're perceptive. You're not broken. Your brain adapted for self-reliance because it had to. And here's the wild part: evolution loves that kind of brain. Humans survived because some people noticed the cracks in the system before it collapsed. Here's where it gets interesting. You don't relate to authority the way other generations do, not because you're rebellious, because you watched authority fail without apology. Teachers said, trust the system. Corporations said, we're a family. Politicians said, we've got this, and your brain filed away the data. Research from the Journal of Adult Development shows that Gen X demonstrates higher internal locus of control than any other generation. That means you don't assume external systems will save you. You assume you'll have to figure it out yourself. Picture a work meeting. Everyone is nodding along to the corporate buzzwords: synergy, alignment, vision, and you're sitting there reading the subtitles no one else seems to see. Who actually has power? Who's avoiding responsibility? Who's about to disappear when things go wrong? You're not antisocial, you're socially sophisticated. You don't hate people, you hate performance. And honestly, congratulations, your brain saved you from believing things that didn't deserve your trust. Now let's talk about your emotional style, because this is where people get you wrong. You're often described as low drama, hard to read, or emotionally reserved, but neuroscience tells a different story. Your mirror neuron system, the network that helps you feel what others feel, is actually highly active. You just learned early not to broadcast everything. Studies from Cambridge University found that people who grew up with emotional inconsistency often develop deep emotional processing paired with restrained expression. You feel deeply, you just don't perform it. It's the difference between composing a symphony and blasting elevator music. Same emotion, different delivery. You're not cold, you're regulated. You're not distant, you're selective. You learned that emotions are powerful, and power isn't something you waste. But here's what explains so much. Your reward system works differently. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter tied to novelty and excitement, doesn't hijack you the way it does younger generations. Research in the Journal of Consumer Psychology shows that Gen X has lower optimal stimulation thresholds. Translation: too much noise feels like chewing cardboard. While others need constant novelty to feel alive, your brain lights up with depth, competence, and autonomy. Give you a quiet room, a meaningful task, and no micromanagement, and your nervous system finally exhales. Think about it: a loud party versus a long solo walk, endless scrolling versus finishing something real, chaos versus clarity. Your brain isn't bored, it's uninterested in empty stimulation. While others are playing checkers, you're playing chess.
And honestly, that's not weird. That's evolutionary brilliance. Here's the kicker. You're incredibly good at seeing through cultural cycles. Trends come and go, moral panics repeat, technologies promise salvation and deliver distraction, and your brain goes, "I've seen this before." Psychologists call this pattern recognition across high-contingency environments. You were raised during economic shifts, media explosions, and social contradictions, so when the world panics, you don't flinch. Not because you don't care, because you've already run the simulation. You're not pessimistic, you're calibrated. You're not disengaged, you're realistic. And that calm you carry, that's hard-earned. But let's be honest about the cost. You learned independence early, which means asking for help can feel unnatural. You absorb responsibility easily, which means burnout can sneak up quietly. You're the person everyone leans on but rarely checks on. Research shows Gen X reports higher emotional self-sufficiency but lower perceived social support. Translation, you're strong, but you shouldn't have to be alone in it. You're not invisible, you just don't demand attention, and that doesn't mean you don't deserve care. And here's the superpower part nobody mentions. You have a rare balance of empathy and skepticism. You can feel deeply without being easily manipulated. You can care without losing yourself. You can love people while still seeing the system clearly. That's not a flaw, that's a stabilizing force. In families, in workplaces, in society. When things get loud, you ground the room. When narratives get extreme, you bring nuance. When emotions spike, you regulate. You're not too quiet, you're anchoring the chaos. So here's what all this means. The next time someone jokes that Gen X doesn't care, remember this, you care deeply, you just don't perform care for applause. You're not missing out, you're opting out of a system that rewards noise over substance. You're not broken, you're not boring, you're not outdated. You're resilient, perceptive, and emotionally literate in a way the world desperately needs. Society wasn't built for minds like yours. It runs on spectacle. You run on substance. And honestly, that's exactly what makes you fascinating. So, tell me, are you team leave me alone and let me work, or team quiet loyalty over loud validation? Drop it in the comments. And if this hit home, subscribe and